Hello and welcome to a new WiseJ.NET video. Today we're going to learn about background tasks. Here I've got a basic WiseJ.NET 4 project with the designer open. So let's go ahead and create a simple project that's going to demo a background task. So first I'll just open the toolbox. I'm going to go ahead and add a button and a progress bar. So there's our button. And there is our progress bar. There we go. I'm going to go ahead and double click on my button to add a click event. And I'm going to go ahead and paste in some code, which I will then explain. Alright, so this right here is our background task. You can see it's everything contained in application.startTask, which means that this code runs before the background tasks start. So all we're going to do is set the button enabled to false so that it is disabled and goes gray and you can't click it, and then we'll set the progress bar value to 0. And let me show you what this application does real quick. As you can see, as soon as I click on it, right, it becomes not enabled, and then the progress bar gets reset to 0. I'll show that again. So disabled button, progress bar set to 0. It completes so quickly it's hard to see, but it's getting set to 0. One issue you'll notice here, actually, if I click on it, you'll notice the progress bar actually fills up before it's completed. If you look real close, you'll see it's filled up here and it hasn't shown completed yet. You'll also, if you look at the percentage, you'll see it's completely filled up and the percentage isn't at 100%. So that's something we need to fix here. And that's because of how this loop works here. So this is where our task starts, so our background task starts. And then we have a for loop, which is looping from I equals 0 to progress bar.maximum, which if I look in the designer, progress bar.maximum is 100. So we're looping from 0 to 100, and we're going up by ones, right? I++, we're increasing by ones. Here we just update the text, so it just shows I%, so 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on up to 100. And here we do progress bar.perform step. So if I hover over this, you can see advances the current position of the progress bar by the amount of the progress bar.step property. And this is our issue here. So we're going up by ones, right? In our for loop, I++ goes up by ones. But if we look at our progress bar.step, you'll see the step is set to 10 by default. So I'm going to change that to 1 and save this. And now if I run it, now you can see it goes up and it hits completed, right? So now it looks correct. Let's see, what else do we do in this for loop? We do application.update this, so that updates the UI. And then we do thread.sleep10, which is, you'll replace this with your actual background task, whatever you're doing that's taking a long time. But in our case, we're just going to sleep for 10 milliseconds. So application.update this updates the UI. Let me comment that out so you can see what happens if you forget to put it in. So now if I click this, you can see background task is running, and then all of a sudden it goes to 100% and it shows the completed, right? So we need that application.update in order to update the UI as the task is running. So this is our for loop here, and then still within our task, but after the for loop, we have a couple of things. So our button becomes enabled, right? So you notice at the end the button becomes enabled. We show an alert box that says completed, and then we do application to update this. And again, let me show you what happens if I comment that out. All right, so now if I click, and you'll notice the alert box no longer shows up, right? Because I got rid of the application.update this. So again, that's very important. We need that to update the UI. Okay, that is the end of this example. So let's go ahead and look at another example of a background task that starts when the session first loads. So I've got a new WiseJ.NET 4 project here. I've gone ahead and opened up program.cs, and I'm just going to add a new static constructor right here. So let me paste that in. There we go. So you can see it says static program, and all of our code I pasted in is contained within this constructor. So if you want to run code when an application first loads, you just need to create a static constructor in any class. The most appropriate one would be program.cs. And so this is our static constructor. So inside of that, we have our application.startTask, which starts our background task. And then what this task is going to do is it's going to run when the session first loads, and it's going to write to a text file. So I need to create my text file. So first I'm going to create my file path. I'm going to use application.mapPath, which takes a small file path, so in this case just a folder called files and a file called log.txt, and it translates it into whatever the actual path would be on the machine. So like C users Julie files log.txt, whatever that is. So now that we've got our file path created, we're going to do directory.create directory, and we're going to send it the file path. So this will make sure that the file path exists if it doesn't already. And you notice here there is no folder called files. So in this case, when I'm running this program for the first time, it does not exist, so it will be created. Next, we're going to use a using statement. So this using statement, if you look, ends right here. So that means that the stream writer only exists inside of this using statement, which is very convenient because we don't have to dispose of it later. It'll just automatically get disposed at the end of the using statement. And then what the stream writer does is it's essentially just going to be used to write to the text file. So we send it the file path, and then we send it append true. So inside of that using statement, we just have a for loop, which loops from 0 to 100 by tens. We have our string that we're going to write to our text file, which just says startup task progress, and then whatever our percentage progress is, so 0%, 10%, 20%, and so on, and then the datetime.now. We're going to then use WriteLine to actually write that to the text file. And then we're going to use flush, which forces it to be written immediately to disk. And then thread.sleep 200, which will pause the task for 200 milliseconds. Again, we're simulating it being time-consuming work, right? So in reality, maybe you're writing to a text file as you're reading from a database or something, right? Something that's going to be time-consuming. Let's see. So, and then right here, background task completed, right? So you notice after my for loop, but still within my using statement, still while I'm writing to the text file, we'll just write background task completed. So let's go ahead and run this and see what it does. And you'll see it loads and it's just an empty page, right? But if I check over here, you'll see there's been a new folder created called files and a new file created called log.txt. And you can see we've got our progress from 0 to 100% and then startup background task completed. So something I want to show here, let me increase that so it's a little bit easier. I'm going to show what happens if you interrupt it partway through, right? So if I run this, so it loads and then I quickly close it. Now if I look at log.txt, so there's our first time that we did all of this stuff, and then our second time you can see it only got to 10%, right? So you can see it's slowly writing to this text file. And again, you'll notice that it didn't overwrite the text file, it just appended to it because append is true. So I want to show what happens if I get rid of writer.flush. So what that does is forces it to be written immediately to disk. And what should happen is if I interrupt it partway through, is we won't see anything, right? So here's our log.txt, right? We got to 10%. So let's see what happens if I just run this and then stop it. Right, so stopping it, I go to log.txt, you'll see nothing new has been added, right? So that's why flush is important, because it forces it to be written immediately to disk. So if it stops partway through, you'll still get some of that progress. So something that would be nice would be to show an alert box that says completed whenever we are done, right? So I've got this commented out code, but you notice if I uncomment it, we actually get a syntax error. right? Keyword this is not valid in a static property, static method, or static field initializer. So the problem with trying to update the UI here is that this runs at the beginning of our program, right? This is our program. This is our program constructor. And program.main, you'll see we actually create page 1. So this code is running before page 1 has been created, so we don't have access to the UI. So unfortunately, if you want to do this, you won't be able to update the UI showing that it's been completed. Okay, so that was our background task that starts when the session first loads. Next, we're going to go ahead and do a background task with multiple users. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how to create a background task that works with multiple users, or to be more accurate, that works with multiple sessions. So here in the designer, I just have a label and a button. Again, if you go to the toolbox, click down here for the toolbox, you can drag in the label and the button into the designer. So I've just done that already. And if we double click on the button, we will see there is a button click event already. So this is a lot of code, so let me go through it slowly. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the event that we're creating and highlight the bits of code that correspond to that event, and then I'll just go through all of the code line by line. So if we look in background service.cs, we can see right here. So right here, we're creating a static event called message that anyone can subscribe to as long as that method matches the background service event handler signature. And we'll go over this signature in a little bit. The other bit of code in background service.cs that's relevant is right here. So this is the code that actually fires the event, and it notifies all of the subscribers that the event has been fired. So let's talk about this background service event handler signature. So if we go here, you can see our background service event handler signature is pretty simple. So this is a method signature that any function must match in order to be called through the delegate. And we just have an object sender and a background service event args e. So this background service event args, if we look here in background service event args.cs, you can see it's pretty simple. It just takes a string called message, and then it takes that string and it assigns it to the message property. So that's the setup for our event. All that code that we saw just created the event, but now we need to subscribe to the event so that we can actually do something when the event fires. And that code is in page1.cs. So if we go to page 1, view code. So here, I'm actually subscribing to the message event from the background service class. So this is the event, and this is the method that's going to be called when the event fires. If I look down here, you can see this event, If I look down here, you can see this is the method that's called when the event fires, background service underscore message, and then what that actually does is it just takes the label text, and it sets it equal to the message. Okay, so that's sort of the general idea of what our event does. Let me go ahead and run the program so you can see what our program does here. So we've got our label and our button. If I click on the button, I subscribe to the event, and you can see the text of the label is updating. And then if I unsubscribe, the text stops updating. So that's, in a quick nutshell, that's what our program does. Okay, so let's go over the background service code line by line. So this just holds a reference to the background thread object that does all the work. This Boolean is just a stop flag. So if we want to stop our background thread, we can set it. And then this I've already explained. This is our event called message. So in the start function, if the thread hasn't been created yet, it creates a new one and sets its entry point to the thread start method. We set our stop flag to false because our thread has been started, and then we start the thread. And then let's look at this actual thread start method, right? So our thread start method from here, the code is over here. So I equals 0, while not stopped. So while it's not stopped, we're going to delay for 1,000 milliseconds, so 1 second, increase I, and then right here, we're just checking to make sure that the event has subscribers to avoid a null reference exception. So if the event has subscribers, then here we raise the event and send a message like hello number 1, hello number 2, right? So it's hello number and then I, which I keeps increasing. And then if you look at the arguments here that are sent to the message function, so this is the sender, which is null, and then this is the background service event args, which is a new background service event args with our string in it, so our hello number 1, hello number 2, and so on. And then here you notice there's 0 references, so this code isn't actually called, but if we wanted to stop the event, we could set the stop flag to be true, and then that would stop this, right? Because this while loop would stop happening. Okay, the other bit of code that we need to look at is our page1.cs code. So I've gone over this briefly with the 2 parts that correspond to the event, right? Subscribing to the event and the code that runs when the event happens. But let's look at this in a little bit more detail. We have our Boolean for subscribed, and then if subscribed is true, we're going to unsubscribe from the event, else we will subscribe to the event. And then we toggle subscribed, right? So what this button does is when you click it, it's going to toggle whether or not you are subscribed to the event. And then we also update the button text to say either unsubscribe or subscribe. Okay, so let's run this again and let me simulate what happens when you've got multiple sessions. So if I click on this button, you can see it says unsubscribe, so I have the option to unsubscribe. If I click on it, now it says subscribe, right? So that's just the text toggling there. And then, so right now I'm unsubscribed, right? I have the option to subscribe. It says hello number 9. So this is still running in the background. So if I hit subscribe again, it's going to jump up, right? So now hello number 25. The other thing we can do is we can have multiple sessions. So if I just duplicate this tab, so you can see over here on our first tab, it says hello number 37, 38, right? It's subscribed, it's listening to the event, it's updating. Over here, this session is not subscribed to the event, so it's not updating. But I can also subscribe 49, 50, and you'll see if I flip between the 2 tabs that they are the same, right? They're both subscribing to the same event. It's getting the same number. And then I can unsubscribe here, unsubscribe here, and so that is our sample. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this episode and learned a lot about background tasks. Bye!